In this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're recapping the game from over the weekend, and we're looking towards tonight's game as well. But first, as always, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. This episode of Locked On Lightning is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're taking a look back at Game 3, as well as looking towards Game 4 tonight. And boy, was there a lot to unpack from Game 3. The Lightning lose this one 4-3 at home. And I mean, where do you really start from this game? Because I feel like, and I'm not just saying this because John Cooper came out and said it the other day, but I firmly believe that this was the best game that the Lightning played. And it was a shame that it ended in overtime. It was and I think we could establish by now that Ryan O'Reilly is probably the most dangerous player on this Maple Leafs team by far. He's the, and I'm not saying that obviously Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner are not, but when you look at Ryan O'Reilly, he has, and I spoke about this when we were talking about this series. I spoke about how Ryan O'Reilly really is going to be the guy that I think that Lightning fans should be on the lookout for, as well as obviously the Lightning should be wary of, just because of what he has done in his career. This isn't, we're not talking about Austin Matthews, who hasn't done much of anything in the playoffs. We're not talking about Mitch Marner. We're not talking about Ilya Samsonov. We're talking about a guy who has won a cup before. And I firmly believe that when you look at a player who has won a cup before and you integrate him into a team such as the Maple Leafs, who really have not done much of anything in the playoffs, I think that that is the player that automatically jumps up to the top of your list, especially when it's a guy that could score, a guy that plays down the middle like Ryan O'Reilly. And he has hurt the Lightning in this series, 2 goals through 3 games thus far, scoring the game-tying goal with a minute left in the third period, assisting on the goal that was in overtime that won the game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I firmly believe for as long as this series goes on, he is going to be the guy that is going to continue to hurt the Tampa Bay Lightning. So really, the Lightning need to do all they can to just be on their guard, to be aware of when Ryan O'Reilly is on the ice. Now, obviously, from this game, from Game 3, that wasn't the entire story. Obviously, there was 2 major events that happened in this game that let's talk about the first one with Morgan Riley, the no call that was on the hit on Braydon Point. Point ended up leaving the game for a little bit of time, came back, was on the ice, I believe, for the third period. And, the more that we see in the playoffs, and this isn't just from the Lightning's point of view, this is from every game. You watch every single playoff game, and it's every hockey fan. I don't know how Toronto Maple Leaf fans feel about it, but I think I speak for the majority when I say the officiating throughout the NHL playoffs is absolutely atrocious. And this is nothing new. We see this every single year. And I don't entirely know why it takes a dip in the playoffs. And it's not just a matter of calls not being made or whatever. It's inconsistency from the officials. There's games where we see a ton of penalties called, and then there's games where we don't see barely anything. In this game, we saw 6 penalties called, 3 for each team. And probably the biggest call of the game, even though the Lightning ended up killing the power play, was on the play in where there was a puck going into the boards down the ice. And Braydon Point was going for it, and Morgan Riley was behind him. And Point takes a dip. And I'm trying to, if you're listening to this or even watching on our YouTube page, I'm really trying to approach this and discuss it in a way to where it doesn't seem biased, and I'm trying to get all the facts straight. So he takes a dip, and Riley, as we can all tell, extends his arm into Point. And I got into a back and forth with someone on Twitter about this. If I had to guess, they really, they were a Leafs fan. But at the time, I was upset, as everybody who is a Lightning fan is. Your best player gets hurt there. He leaves the game in pain. A chaos ensues. Steven Stamkos ends up fighting Austin Matthews, which pretty cool fact from that. First time that 2 60-goal scorers have fought each other in the playoffs, which is it's pretty cool, I guess. But chaos ensues. The two teams end up going back and forth fighting, and the Maple Leafs end up going on the power play. And first of all, I don't know what the refs expected to happen or not to happen from that. And I said, when I spoke with this listener, or I would assume it was a Lightning fan, a Leafs fan, we were discussing, they came out and said, and well, my thing was, I'm sorry, I don't know how Riley is still in the game. The NHL should be embarrassed. And someone reached out and said he squared up, shoulder, chest. He's a neutral party. Can't help that Point twist it and hit the boards. He didn't lean weight into him and the boards. My response, and a day later, obviously we saw the complete opposite. I mean, I'm sorry, that was a whole different play, but if you look at the penalty in the rule book for boarding, what Morgan Riley did in this instance was 100% a boarding call. And I think I speak for a lot of people, a lot of Lightning fans, where I say that really I would have settled for a 2-minute minor than Riley getting ejected or getting suspended. I mean, it seems as though Point's going to play tonight, so it is what it is. But my thing about this, because we've seen this countless times, whether it be a playoff game, whether it be a regular season game, there's been multiple times where the refs have assessed a minor regardless of the legality of the hit. And I'm talking about situations like this where the hit looks nasty, where the game was already tense as it is between the two teams, where the refs need to make a call for the sake of making a call. And I quite honestly, and if there's any Leafs fans that are listening or watching this, I'd feel the same exact way if it was the other way around. If they called a penalty on, I don't know, a Lightning player for doing that to Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner or whomever, I would say, okay, the game was about to get out of control. And a hit like that, a no call would completely spiral things. And so you got to make the call. You know, I'd be pissed about it in the moment, but at the end of the day, I would say, you know what, the call had to be made because to really make sure to police the game, to make sure things don't escalate. And things are already escalated, or tensions are already running high because of the bunting hit from game one. So I kind of figured that would have been the ref's way of getting one back for the Lightning. And don't sit there or don't reach out to me on Twitter or YouTube and say that doesn't happen. That happens all the time in the NHL. Happens all the time in a playoff series where they'll miss a call in a game and then maybe get one back later on or later on in the series. That's just the way it happens. Don't tell me it doesn't happen when a ref literally got fired from the league for being on the hot mic for saying that. Everybody, for as long as the game has been around, knows that has been a thing. So the fact that A, there was no call, B, we didn't even, and besides the fact, and we'll get to it in a minute, that the Lightning already got hosed on a call early on in the game, but the refs need to be better. They need to be better in the playoffs, especially. I don't know if it's burnout or just, and I don't think it's they're letting the players play, because we like I said, we saw 6 penalties in this game. There's been a lot more, not only in this series called in a game, but around the NHL. And sometimes the penalties that have been called are atrocious. So the league should be absolutely embarrassed by the way and by the level of officiating that has been going on, not only this year, but the last 4. Now, are the chances of things being changed, is that going to happen? Absolutely not. I don't think Gary Bettman is even remotely aware of how bad this is. I don't expect anything to happen over time. I don't expect there to be even a statement to be released after the playoffs unless it's something completely egregious. But there was another call in this game where the Lightning really, I'm not saying, and you know me, and if you've been a listener for a very long time, you know that I don't make mistakes in terms of, I don't make excuses for this team very often. Usually when they lose a game, I'm the first one out here to say, well, they lost the game because A, B, and C. But, and this might be the first time that I have said this in the history of this show, the reason why the Lightning lost this game wasn't because of something they did or didn't do. They lost this game because of the refs' incompetence. And we'll talk about that in the second segment. And you already know where I'm going with that. It's the goal that was not called and then reviewed, and then the whistle that was played too dead was whistled that was called too early on this. And maybe we'll talk later on as the series goes on, see if this maybe is a call that not only screwed the Lightning out of one game, but pretty much dictated the rest of the series. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our friends at Gametime. Now, if you haven't heard of Gametime, Gametime is one of the best apps for buying tickets out there. Gametime is fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped. I used these a couple of times, and I absolutely love them. I went to a Met game a couple of weeks ago, got tickets last minute for $4 total. That's $2 each. You definitely have to try it out. They have deals for all the best events around in your area as well as across the country. So go to the Gametime app, download it, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So once again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for listening to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, where we provide, not only here on Locked On Lightning, but there's a podcast for every single team out there. So go ahead. If you want to listen with the NFL draft coming up, listen to Locked On Buccaneers. They're probably doing all their draft stuff right now. So definitely don't want to miss that. Who's going to replace Tom Brady at Raymond James? So we'll see. But let's talk about the ginormous elephant in the room. I don't even know what to call it anymore. I mean, if you could provide a huge example of the incompetence of the NHL officials and just ridiculousness that is the officiating in this playoffs alone, look no further than the last two games. The Lightning game, the early whistle on the Braydon Point goal. I'm gonna call it that. The Braydon Point goal. And if you didn't see it, Braydon Point scores. Well, looks like he scores. You would think by just the camera that he scores. Shoots a shot. Samsonov does not have any control of it. And for whatever reason, the refs blow the whistle seconds within it making contact with Samsonov. Goal is scored. They go back on the replay, clear goal. They come back. They review. They say, nope, no goal. Whistle was blown. Fast forward to Sunday. Panthers-Bruins. I don't remember for what team it was. I would assume it was the Bruins. I actually tweeted it on my Twitter account, Dankydank, DENKYD8NK. Tweeted the actual highlight. It looked like it was a goal for the Panthers. No, it was a goal for the Bruins. It was on looked like, I don't remember who that was. Anyway, they blew the whistle too early. They go to the replay to see if it was across the line. Bruins score. I think it was on Marchand goal. And the refs come back and rule it a good goal. And I've heard a couple reasons, at least for the Lightning non-goal across certain outlets. So in the rule book, or I don't even know if it's a rule book, but apparently, which is BS, apparently the refs are trained in a way in these situations where if the ref loses track of the puck once it makes contact near the goaltender or in the crease or whatever, that scoring area, if they don't see a rebound or if whatever the case may be, they are trained to blow the whistle. My answer to that is BS. That is total crap. And I'll tell you why. Because how many times, whether you started watching hockey this year, start watching hockey this series, how many times have we seen the complete opposite? How many times have you seen someone take a shot, the goaltender looks like he smothers it? How many times have we seen them completely just swallow their whistles, and chaos just completely ensues in the crease? The answer is infinite amount of times. And this wasn't the first instance. There was a couple of instances in this game, I believe for both sides, where the refs just blew their whistle. Now, I don't know if this is the league putting out propaganda to these certain outlets and saying that to cover their butts, but wouldn't it make more sense? Because it's a lot harder to blow the whistle early, especially with the rule where once the whistle blows, the play is dead. Isn't it? And the fact that you're not even consistently enforcing it, as we saw evident in the Boston Bruins game with the Florida Panthers, would it make more sense to allow the team the play to evolve, and then you could always go back and look at the review and then overturn it if need be? I mean, even in the NFL, when there's a fumble, you let the play just completely go. Half the time when you're watching a game, you don't even hear the whistle on plays like that. And the fact that you called it in a game, and I find it funny that we're not hearing really much from Leafs fans on this, and it's because, listen, they know they dodged the bullet. We all know if the game becomes 4-2 at that point, the Leafs ain't winning that game. We're sitting here talking about the Lightning being up 2-1 going into game 4. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about this absolute lunacy that is this non-call. And if we're having instant replay or a review on this play, shouldn't the refs be allowed to overturn that? And I don't know. There's so many questions to be asked about this play, because if you look at the replay, even from a blind angle, because I saw it in another outlet where the ref was positioned, I believe it was actually on the broadcast itself, where the ref was positioned, he has no way of seeing whether or not that puck is covered, or even that Samsonov has control. And don't you feel, and I'm sure every Lightning fan that was at least remotely close to the ice at Amalie could say the same thing. They even knew from that angle that Samsonov, from that position, they knew he didn't have control of the puck. But you know what? It's ruled a no goal, and the Lightning end up losing in overtime because the Leafs scored 2 unanswered goals. And like I said, you don't hear it very often from me. You don't hear it at all because I never say it. I'm very straightforward on this show. When the Lightning lose a game, it's usually because I always talk about the things they didn't do. But in this game, they got robbed 100%. Okay? This isn't some other instance in the playoffs where we've heard other teams complain about the Lightning where it was a non-offsides call or whatever, something of that instance. That was a clear-cut goal where they would have extended their lead to 2 goals. And I guarantee you, if it was 4-2, that would have been it. That would have been it. And that's why you don't see across social media, namely Twitter, I don't see a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans gloating, because they know they don't deserve that. They know they didn't deserve to win that game. And there needs to be, like I said, get me back calls by the refs. I would imagine, I don't expect things to get better with the officiating in tonight's game. I don't expect there to be a get me back call for the Lightning, because that's not going to win you the game. Oh, we messed things up in the last game, so we're going to give them a crappy holding call when they're already on the power play. No, that's at the end of the day, if the Lightning lose this series, we are going to look back at that play as to when things were not fair for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So wrapping things up on the show, let me know in the comments below what you think about that. Are you over it? I just have a terrible taste in my mouth with all that. I just think that, and like I said, you don't hear a lot of gloating and boasting from Toronto fans, so you know that they feel dirty about it. If you're a Maple Leaf fan, let me know. Do you feel dirty about it? If you don't, whatever. Like I said, this isn't Matt, we're not complaining about a no call offsides and there was, I think there was another play in this game where I think it was Braydon Point actually, or Hagel got hit in the face, no call, high sticking. And I'm sure that there's been missed calls that I've not kept track of that could have gone your way. But let me know in the comments below what you think about the last game. I just think that win in overtime provides a lot of momentum for the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward into the series. They don't necessarily have to win tonight in order to feel in control, unless it's a complete blowout like we saw in game one. I think, you at least splitting the series on the road and then going back to Toronto. I think that right now the Maple Leafs are in the driver's seat. Unless we see the Lightning win the next two, which is going to be tough. It's going to be very tough for this team. But I will say, even though the Lightning did lose this game, they played probably the best game we have seen them play all series. And I spoke about it, I believe, after game one, where I said, yeah, winning by that big of a margin is very impressive. And if last year's first round matchup was any indication, we were probably going to get a same result, but flip-flop the winners and losers, and sure as hell we did in game two. And I think even after then, I said, listen, I'm not going to say whether the Lightning are in a good spot right now or in a bad spot until I see an actual hockey game in terms of goals scored. And we saw that in game 3 on Saturday night. And I think the Lightning played very well. I think that they were the most disciplined we've seen them in quite some time. I think that as well as the defense played, I still think that this team is really hurting without Eric Chernak, and I really think, and it doesn't seem like he's going to play tonight. Point's a game time decision. I would imagine Braydon Point's going to play. Victor Hedman was moving a lot better than I anticipated he would in this game. And I think we saw a lot of good things from a lot of these players on the team. Tanner Jeannot, I thought he played well. Brandon Hagel, the most dangerous player on the ice, kind of taking that, usually we talk about Braydon Point as being that kind of player, but Brandon Hagel, it just seemed like he was on a whole nother planet than everybody else on either team. I expect him to come up big tonight. I think he's going to be heavily involved on the ice and have an impact on this game. Obviously, the burning question, and this was actually a question that was poised towards me. I don't know if it was on our YouTube or on Twitter. I believe it was on Twitter. A listener asked, are we concerned, or is this the beginning of the end for Andrei Vasilevskiy? As we all know, he has not played well in this series. Going into game one, it kind of looked like he was starting to get it together. He was kind of showing flashes of the Vasilevskiy of old. Little bit of a different story in this series, getting beat on his blocker side. No surprise there. But the big concerning thing, I think, especially in these first 3 games, has been the early goals, as well as allowing goals that really a goaltender of his caliber should not allow. And if he was a mid-level goaltender, if he was some goaltender, I don't know. I can't really think of any other goaltender on any other team right now that is kind of mid-level in that regard. I guess the guy from New Jersey, Kira, the goaltender that won the other night for the Devils, guy like that. I think if Vasilevskiy was just another guy on this team in terms of, or just another goaltender, that's one thing. But He's a Vezina Trophy level goaltender. I still consider him the best on the planet. I think over the last 5 years, as terms of this year, Linus Ullmark takes the cake. But, and I said this going into the series, really, it's not going to be a matter of how the Lightning play defensively or offensively. It's going to be a matter of how 88 does. And he has not played well. He has not, at times, especially early on, had that lockdown mentality. And I think at times, especially in the playoffs, that can really, really hurt a team in terms of confidence. Especially now, you know, this is the moment in time where Vasilevsky really needs to step up because of the Lightning's defensive issues with you know, they were without Victor Hedman and Eric Chernak for a game. They got Hedman back, but you still have Chernak out, who, like I said, I still believe is the best defensive player on this team. And that just shows you how valuable he is to the team. But really, in those moments, you expect your goaltender, your Vezina Trophy level guy, your guy who I think really good argument you can make for him is that if he ever were to retire tomorrow, he's a Hall of Famer. I think he needs to come up big. He needs to make a statement, and he needs to do that tonight. I'm not saying he needs to go out and throw up a donut on the scoreboard, but I think he needs to do something sort of close to that. And I think we could all agree that really that is the kind of performance that will, even though the Lightning did suffer a gut punch the other night, I don't think that they're down on themselves. I think they actually feel more confident. But I think that a Vasilevsky high-level performance is going to be the thing that will get them even higher on that confidence level, on that confidence scale. And so we'll have to wait to see how he plays tonight. Let me know what you think about this game. We'll be dropping this about an hour or so before puck drop. Comment on the video, this episode, in the comments below on YouTube. Follow us, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Follow our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. Tweet to me during the game. I'll be live tweeting, so go ahead and check that out. Danky Dank, DENKY, Love hearing from all of you and conversing with you throughout the course of the game. So we'll be back tomorrow, obviously, to recap, hopefully, a Lightning win at home before they have to go back up to Toronto. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you on the next.